When I graduate, I will be over $35,000 in debt. As I'm sure all of you are aware, public education continues to be massively attacked from the race to the top, budget cuts, privatization, faculty and teacher layoffs, and rising tuition, etc., etc. Last September, Californian students and faculties strike the rising tuition. Overnight, they were going to raise tuition there 32%. They striked and they sparked a movement to resist this war on public education. This energy fed into March 4th of this year, where in over 32 states, thousands of students, faculty, and communities organized, mobilized, and resisted the neoliberal policies that is destroying education in this country. Just this past Saturday, on October 2nd, there was a One Nation Working Together protest where over 145,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, where they demanded to build a more unified country with good jobs, equal justice, and a quality public education for all. Today is a continuation of these movements for a better tomorrow, working together so that our futures will no longer be shortchanged. Today is also an opportunity for us to come together to, as PSU students, faculty, and community, to educate ourselves and resist the budget cuts and other attacks that are forthcoming on public education as we face at least a $1.5 billion budget shortfall in the state of Oregon, which could lead to a doubling of tuition this next academic year for 2011-2012. This rally is a mix of speakers from K-12 through university and music provided by the Portland Professional Sounds Fall Concert Series. And from 2 to 3, we'll break into small groups for discussions for solutions to fight this so-called budget crisis. Before I get off stage, I want to share a short story with you. On April 21st, around 3 a.m. of this year, a small island in the Caribbean, students at the island's largest university took power into their own hands. What started as a simple 48-hour strike to protest $100 million in budget cuts, a sharp increase in student fees, and the administration's unwillingness to negotiate with students, the students' anger grew as they learned about the privatization of the university, the administration's plan for the budget cuts, and faculty and professor layoffs. These students knew that they had to act and to resist because their futures were jeopardized. Word spread of the student strike, and it sparked a wildfire in the community. Because this island had been facing many neoliberal policies imposed by outside forces. Parents, unions, faculty joined together to resist the police attacks on these students. The momentum spread, and before the university's administration knew it, the strike had spread to 9 of the 11 university campuses under the university system. And a number of large unions also were calling for a general strike to stand in solidarity with the students. To make a long story short, on June 21st, the students won all of their demands, all of them. And after 2 months of strikes and occupations, despite how much the administration wanted to punish these students, because of the great community support, no students faced expulsion or suspensions, and they actually won the legitimate right to participate in marches, protests, etc. A student participating in this strike triumphantly announced, "We, the students, have defended public education, and the sleeping youth have been awakened." This strike, some of you aren't aware, was the University of Puerto Rico strike that has drastically transformed the island of Puerto Rico. It just happened earlier this year. I share this with you Not only because it is recent history, but to show you that you have a voice. Every single one of you has power. And if we stand shoulder to shoulder, we can resist the attacks on our education. We set what is possible. Look throughout history, examine it. We set through what is possible. And the only way to create everlasting true change is through action. So we must organize, mobilize, and resist.
I want to talk about this budget shortfall because I want to know where my money is. It's easy to see where it's not going. I know it's not going towards preventing tuition increases because they happen every year. It's obviously not being used to value the work that our faculty do at cultivating minds and imparting knowledge, because they keep getting forced to do take furlough days this year and last year. It's not being put towards preserving and strengthening Black studies, Native American studies, women's studies, Chicano Latino studies. Since they are continuously placed in perilous positions in regards to funding and staffing, and they even had to fight last year to fend off a threat of consolidation. That was a very real threat. And my money is not being used to keep class sizes down, or to offer the classes that students want when they need them, or to keep education accessible and affordable by reforming and increasing financial aid, or even to keep K-12 schools open in the neighborhoods that need them. Because if it were, then we wouldn't have to keep fighting for these issues as we endlessly have to. So where is my money? $663.8 billion of it is going to the U.S. Department of Defense to fund unnecessary wars motivated by greed. So don't tell me there's no money for education when there is $663.8 billion available for war. At least $3 billion of that defense budget is being sent yearly in military aid to the apartheid state of Israel, which continuously and unabashedly flouts international law. And our entire U.S. higher education budget is $3.6 billion yearly. So foregoing military aid to Israel for 1 year alone would double our higher education budget. Do not tell me there's no money for education when there's a sick amount of money that's readily available to support apartheid Israel. And when military spending is at $663.8 billion, while education spending is at $46.7 billion, we have a problem. Our priorities are skewed. When countless potential students are denied access to an education, and the education they would be offered has suffered immensely in quality, while our country engages in imperialist military endeavors across the globe, we have a problem. When we find bombs over books and drones over strong educational programs, we have a problem. And when I can't exercise my right to education because I can't financially afford to, but the country I live in can comfortably afford to bomb the hell out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Palestine, we have a problem. And the problem is not that we don't have the money, it's not that it's not there, it's that it's tied up around the globe paying for U.S. imperialism, and our political officials don't seem to have the moral sense to see that education is worthy of state spending and war is not. Budget shortfall is not the right term. What we're witnessing is more like a gross misappropriation of not only funds, but also our values. So not only do I want to know exactly where my money is, I want my money back. I want it reinvested in me rather than it being used to further the United States military reach and violent imperialist policies, because while war breeds destruction, education breeds liberation. And liberation is what I want my money spent on. Justice is what I want my money spent on. We have to demand that our right to education be funded and actualized instead of the U.S. war machine as it is being now. We're mobilizing for this demand now as a unified body of concerned and fed up students, and we will continue to mobilize for this demand and recognition when we march Saturday, October 9th for money, jobs, and education, not for wars and occupation.
My name is Zach Brugman. I work with the Oregon Student Association. I am actually speaking on behalf of the university class president, Katie Markey. I am actually an attorney. I graduated from Willamette Law in the spring of '09. I went to law school for the purpose of advancing educational policies. I've done a lot of work on education and tying education to the Constitution. And I took this opportunity to speak because a lot of our problems we're facing right now with our educational system really flow from the way the Constitution of the United States and how it's been interpreted. Originally, when we wrote the Declaration of Independence, we said that government was instituted among human beings to effectuate our happiness, our safety, to protect our unalienable rights, among these including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think anybody here would deny that education is very closely tied to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. However, when our Constitution was adopted in 1789 and later ratified in 1791, education was not a right expressly listed in the Constitution. However, the proponents for the Bill of Rights, they wanted to list rights, that were retained by the people. And that was through the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment states that all rights not enumerated in the Constitution shall not be denied or disparaged, and that others were retained by the people. These other rights include our unalienable rights, our natural rights. That would include education as well. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court decided the case San Antonio School District versus Rodriguez. That court case stands for education being labeled as a non-fundamental right within the meaning of the Constitution. That court case was based in San Antonio, Texas, where an inner-city school was receiving about 1/5 the funding of a suburban school. And when you're providing $20,000 a year per student, and the school downtown is only providing a couple $1,000s per year per student, you've got a gross disparity in educational funding. That is really at the heart of a lot of our problems, is the fact that we have such disparities in funding in K through 12. And that court case, San Antonio School District versus Rodriguez, essentially validated that type of gross disparity. The Supreme Court said that education was not a fundamental right because it was not listed in the Constitution. Well, there are many constitutional scholars which say that that case is actually a violation of the Ninth Amendment's disparagement clause. The Ninth Amendment, as I said, says that all rights not enumerated in the Constitution should not be, it doesn't mean that they're not in there. These unalienable rights, part of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, these are embodied in our Constitution, and I don't think anybody here would, think that we revolted against England, who, was not honoring our unalienable rights, that these rights were not in the Constitution. So education is very much in the Constitution. And a big part of that court case was saying that we needed education to properly exercise our voting right. So, I'm out here wearing a voter vote shirt. The way we get better educational policies is through voting, is through ensuring that our representatives are properly addressing education, that they are thinking that education is actually something important that they need to focus on and give us money for. I'm here to tell you guys that if you're not registered to vote, definitely do so. Definitely stay informed. That is how we get the school system that we need, is through our vote. That's where our power comes from. We do have a table over there between Smith and Newberger if you need to register to vote. And if anybody wants to help out student government, we got a lot more students to register before the deadline. Oregon Student Association is your voice down in Salem. We are independent of the school and of the university system, and we're here to fight for you in keeping, tuition low and, fighting for the most optimal educational policies. We need your help. You helping OSA is like you helping yourself, because we're fighting for you down in Salem. So please come by Smith 117 and help us out, and that's how we get the education that we need.